Good morning. Today we're looking at Luke 15. In Luke 15 we see three parables. The parable of the lost coin, the parable of the lost sheep, and the parable of the lost son. We often call this the prodigal son. Now, as a child, I loved the story of the prodigal son. I loved the fact that if I made mistakes and I went the wrong way, my father would still be there, welcoming back with open arms. As I got slightly older, as a teenager and maybe a young adult, I began to relate more to the older son, and I got slightly disgruntled. I was like, Father, why are you elevating the younger son over the older one? It's not fair. And I think part of this was because this was sometimes how I felt. I may have felt perhaps overlooked at school or college, or maybe even at church when I was the one quietly serving, and yet these new people came in with their different ways and they were given positions of authority. It didn't seem fair. And it didn't seem fair that when people had made mistakes were welcomed back into the fold. What about me, the faithful one? Now, I'm much more mature now, really grown up, and also I've done a bit of research. I can now relate far more to both the younger son and the father in this story. What's really interesting to me is that the father waited for the younger son to return, and then when he saw him coming back, he ran and embraced him, welcomed him, and threw a party. Amazing. But the older son, he did not turn up to the feast, and yet the father went and sought the older son. And there's a real difference here. The father's desire is to seek and to save the lost. And that's really important. That's the crux, really, of our Christian journey and what we're called to do. But in this story, the father waited for the younger son to come and approach him. And yet with the older son, the faithful one, he actually went and sought him out. I don't know about you, but in my Christian journey, there's been times when I've grown a little cold, when I've become slightly distant. And the Father has always sought me out. He's always brought me back. He's always brought the right people around me. My Father doesn't wait for me to turn back to him. He's the one that seeks me out. And I love that so much. And it's only recently that I've begun to understand that what a special relationship that we have and how precious we are. Don't forget that in the story, the father said to the older son, everything that I have is now yours. He was praising the son. He was affirming him and his position. Also interesting to note that in the story of the lost coin and the lost sheep, there is resolution. However, in this story, there's no resolution. We're left wondering, does the older son come to the party or not? And I think that's the question we have to decide. Can we allow those elements of bitterness and disgruntlement come into our lives? Or can we welcome those that come back to the church after making mistakes? Can we welcome those in that maybe have had different journeys to us, and can we accept them and not feel threatened when we perceive them being elevated above us? I want to say to you, the older sons, well done for being faithful. Well done for staying the course. Well done for doing those jobs that nobody else would wish to do. God sees you, he hears you, he loves you, and you are very, very much appreciated. Have a great day, church.